Very easy. This argument is built upon a false presupposition. That is, the Quranic author believes that Miriam, the sister of Moses and Aaron, and Mary, the mother of Jesus, are the same one person. That's what the author of the Quran thought. If we are to establish and show that the author of the Quran does not think that Miriam and Mary are the same person, this argument falls flat on its face. Very easy. Quran chapter 2 verse 87 says, we gave Moses the book, and after Moses we sent many prophets, and then we sent Jesus and we supported him with the Holy Spirit. And so the Quranic author displays an understanding that Moses and Jesus have a long gap of prophets between them. And so we establish that the author of the Quran does not think Miriam, who existed in the time of Aaron and Moses, is the same person as Mary, who existed in the time of Jesus. The other reason why the Quranic author does not believe that Miriam and Mary are the same person is because whenever God refers to Mary, the mother of Christ, in the Quran, he refers to her by her name, Miriam. But whenever the author of the Quran refers to the sister of Aaron and Moses, he does not refer to her by her name, proving that the author of the Quran does not think that Mary and Miriam are the same one person. So what does it mean for Mary, the mother of Jesus, to be the sister of Aaron? This is a play on words that God uses in the Quran. It's truly miraculous. Not only does sister of Aaron infer and denote that she comes from a Levite tribe, from the tribe of Aaron, but he also calls her the sister of Aaron to remind her that she shares the name of the great Miriam, the very sister of Aaron. So she is the sister of Aaron in the sense that she is exactly like Miriam, who's actually the sister of Aaron. And she's the sister of Aaron because she comes from the very Levite tribe of Aaron. The Prophet explains this. When the Christians of Najran come to him asking the same question, he says that the people of old used to give names that resemble names of prophets and pious ones.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be a tough one. Again, we're going to do some more Orthodox Muslim Dawah bullshit. In this video, he was making fun of a brother who was saying the Quran has a mistake when it claims that Mary is the sister of Aaron and the daughter of Imran. So his argument is that when the Quran mentions the sister of Moses, it doesn't give her name. Well, that is very true. That tells me that Allah didn't know that Moses had a sister named Miriam. I know. Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence bullcrap. Okay? Unfortunately, that's not true because we can refer to Jewish traditions, Jewish scriptures, and we all know that Imran, the father of Moses, Aaron, and Miriam, we know who they are. But just like in the Quran, Allah doesn't know who Eve is or how he created her. What can you expect from a comic book with the name of the Quran? All right. He also claims that Mary, that the reason she's called sister of Aaron, daughter of Imran, it's kind of like a respect thing. He also says it's because she shares in the line of lineage with those two, with Moses and Aaron, meaning she is a Levite, which he has absolutely zero proof. No Jewish sources, no Christian sources, no apocryphal sources. Okay? We also know that in order for the messianic prophecy of Jesus to be fulfilled, he has to come from the line of Judah, which is the line of David, right? Now, I will say there is no explicit writings that specifically state she is from the tribe of Judah, but based on the fact that she married Joseph, who is from the tribe of Judah, and because of the messianic prophecies, we can get the idea that she's from the tribe of Judah. Now, Mr. Orthodox Muslim is going to have to prove, right, his claims. He's going to have to show some evidence. So I went to my favorite guy, as always. I went to my favorite guy, my new favorite guy, Imam Grok. And I was talking to Imam Grok. And I asked Grok. I said, Imam Grok, I'm debating a Muslim on the Quran era of Mary, the sister of Aaron and the daughter of Imran. They also claim she was from the tribe of Levi. Does Jewish tradition ever use such references? All right, and Grok says the Quranic references to Mary as the sister of Aaron and the daughter of Imran, 19:28 and 3:35-36. Okay, let's address this by examining Quranic claims, Jewish tradition, and whether such references exist in Jewish sources. Right? Because remember, Mary was a Jew, so we got to go to the Jewish sources. We're going to skip all this bullcrap and we're just going to go here to the Jewish tradition. Jewish tradition rooted in Hebrew Bible, the Tanakh, the Talmud, and other rabbinic sources does not explicitly refer to Mary, the mother of Jesus, as the sister of Aaron or the daughter of Imran or a member of the tribe of Levi in any way. Now that would be kind of strange, ladies and gentlemen. I would think the Jews would know if she was related to Aaron or some guy named Imran, or if she was a Levite. Okay? I mean, in Jewish tradition, the only Miriam, that was the sister of Moses, is actually his sister, Miriam. Okay? There are no Jewish sources, okay, that use the phrase sister of Aaron. It says here, the phrase sister of Aaron does not appear in Jewish texts to describe Mary. Jewish sources do not use sibling terminology metaphorically to denote tribal or spiritual kinship in this context. For example, the Talmud and Midrash do not describe figures like Mary in such terms. Some Christian and Jewish scholars suggest the Quranic phrase may reflect a misunderstanding or conflation of Mary with Miriam. Yes, Allah was drinking the Kool-Aid, right? And they possibly due to oral tradition or apocryphal texts circulating in the Near East during the time of the Quran's compilation. All right, let's see. Mary is the daughter of Imran. In Jewish tradition, Imran is the father of Moses, Aaron, and Miriam. There is no reference to Imran having a daughter named Mary or any connection to the family of Jesus' mother. Jewish sources about Mary, the Talmud, the text, are sparse. They don't say nice things about Mary. All right. The Quranic identification of Mary with Imran's family does not align with Jewish genealogical records or traditions which do not assign Mary to this lineage. So again, you can't use the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. No, we should have something to claim that there is no Jewish sources, no Christian sources, no sources at all is very problematic for a Muslim, considering that they make the claim. Allah makes the claim. The burden of proof is on them. You and I don't have to prove anything. Okay? Mary in the tribe of Levite. Jewish tradition does not explicitly state Mary, the mother of Jesus, was from the tribe of Levi. The New Testament, which draws on Jewish context, because after all, the writers of the New Testament were Jews. Okay? Suggests that Mary was from the tribe of Judah, as she was betrothed to Joseph, a Judahite, and Jesus is described as a descendant of King David, which was from the tribe of Judah. Okay, there are some Christian traditions which infer a possible Levite connection because her cousin, okay, was a Levite. She was married to Zechariah, who was a Levite priest, and Levite priests tend to marry Levites. That does not infer or conclude that Mary herself was a Levite. because the lineage comes from the father, right? Or the husband. So Mary's mother or father could have had a sister that married Zechariah. That still would not make Mary a Levite. All right, again, in Rabbinic Judaism, the tribe comes from the father. All right, it goes on to say the Quranic narrative of Mary's temple service. Because remember, in the Quran, it's kind of like implied, inferred, alluded that Mary kind of grew up in the temple, which is bullshit. All right, so the Quranic narrative of Mary's temple service, chapter 3, verse 37, resembles apocryphal Christian texts like the Proto-Evangelium of James, which describes Mary being raised in the temple, which is not allowed. However, Jewish tradition does not support women being dedicated to the temple service in any way, as Levite duties were male-centric. Yes, Judaism, like Islam, is male-centric. All right, where do we get the possible sources of confusion? The apocryphal Proto-Evangelium of James II, okay, has Mary in the temple as a virgin. And what do we see in the Quran? Mary as a virgin in the temple, okay? Oral traditions, the Quran may draw on Jewish, Christian, or Ebionite traditions that blended biblical figures. Some scholars suggest that the sister of Aaron references reflects a typological link where Mary is seen as a new Miriam. That's one of the arguments that Mr. Orthodox Muslim, culture, context in Arabic, sister or brother can denote tribal or spiritual kinship, blah, 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 blah. Right? But the Jewish tradition does not use such terminology for Mary. So, ladies and gentlemen, whatever the Quran says is bogus. What's the conclusion to this? Jewish tradition does not refer to Mary, the mother of Jesus, as a sister of Aaron, the daughter of Emma, or a member of the tribe of Levite. So we don't care about what the Quran says. All right. If you're debating, you might emphasize Jewish sources maintain a clear distinction between Miriam of Exodus and Mary of the New Testament, with no shared terminology or lineage as described in the Quran. All right. It says here, if your opponent insists on a Levite connection, ask for primary Jewish or biblical evidence, as their claim relies on Quranic inference rather than Jewish tradition. All right. So then I said, any Jewish sources that place her in the Judea tribe. Jewish tradition does not provide explicit detailed genealogy information about Mary, because they didn't like Jesus, so why would they like his mother? In the same way that it does for biblical figures like Moses or David. However, there are Jewish and related sources that implicitly or contextually place Mary in the tribe of Judah, primarily through her association with the Davidic lineage. Below, I'll outline the relevant sources and their implications. The New Testament, Jewish context. The New Testament, while a Christian text, is rooted in a Jewish milieu and provides the primary basis for associating Mary with the tribe of Judah. I'm not going to bore you with all these texts because you probably already know it. Again, these references do not directly state Mary's affiliation, but strongly imply she is from Judah. Muslims don't even have this. They don't have anything that implies that Miriam, their Miriam, is from the tribe of Levites. All right, Jewish tradition on tribal affiliation. In Jewish law and tradition as outlined in the Hebrew Bible or later rabbinic texts, tribal affiliation is determined by the father. Okay? If Mary married Joseph, a Judahite, it is reasonable to infer she was also from Judah, as Jewish communities often prioritize tribal endogamy, meaning they married from within their own tribe, especially for prominent families like the Davidic line. And we know Joseph was from the Davidic line. The Talmud and Mishnah emphasize that a child's tribal status follows the father. While Mary's father is not named in Jewish sources, her association with a Davidic heir, Jesus, in a Jewish context suggests her family was likely Judahite to align with Messianic expectations. Again, we don't have many sources or hardly any sources about that. All right, absence of Levite claims in Jewish traditions. Jewish sources never associate Mary with the tribe of Levite or priestly lineage. This would be very important, right? I mean, there's a reason that they don't associate her as a Levite, because she wasn't a Levite. There's no Jewish tradition or anything that links Mary to Levi, Aaron, or Imran, which reinforces the likelihood that she was understood to be from Judah, especially given the messianic emphasis of David's line. All right, we're not going to go over the proto-evangelium again. Elizabeth's Levite connection. The New Testament notes that Mary's relative Elizabeth was married to Zechariah, a priest, implying Elizabeth was likely Levite. Now, she didn't have to be Levite, because Levites, priests, especially depending on their status, were allowed to marry non-Levites as long as they married an honorable, respected Israelite woman, meaning from the other tribes. This has led to some speculate Mary might have Levite ties, but Jewish tradition does not extend to Mary herself, and tribal identity would still follow her father's line, not her mother or relatives. You get that, Orthodox? What's the conclusion? While no Jewish sources explicitly state Mary was from the tribe of Judah, the New Testament, Jewish context, All right, it says if in your debate, you can point out, this is for you guys, because I don't debate this stuff. I debate the Quran. In your debate, you can point out that Jewish tradition via the Davidic lineage and tribal norms consistently placed Mary in Judah, with no sources supporting a Levite origin. If your opponent claims otherwise, ask for specific Jewish texts that align with the Quranic narrative, as these are absent from Jewish tradition. All right. So then I said, is there any Jewish tradition that would ever call her the sister of Aaron or the daughter of Imran in any sense? No Jewish tradition refers to Mary, the mother of Jesus, as the sister of Aaron or the daughter of Imran in any sense. Not literal, not metaphorical, or not typological. These designations found in the Quran are unique to Islamic tradition. So that bull crap that Orthodox Muslim says, oh, when Muhammad talked to the Christians of Naranj, ladies and gentlemen, Muhammad didn't even exist. Okay, and it wouldn't matter what the supposed Christians said, because you have to look at the Jewish tradition, right? If you want to know about Jews, you go to the Jewish tradition. You don't go learn about what Jews do, the tradition, from Christians, and you wouldn't want to go and learn about Christian tradition or their doctrine from a Jew. Okay, that's asinine. Well, that's what Islam teaches. So, analysis of the Jewish tradition. Biblical context and Jewish tradition, the only sister of Aaron is Miriam, the sister of Aaron and Moses. Then we go to the metaphorical or honorific use. Jewish tradition does not use sister as a metaphorical term to denote tribal kinship, spiritual similarity, or honorific status, and the way some Muslim scholars interpret the Quranic phrase. Let me rephrase that. Metaphorical or honorific use. Jewish tradition does not use sister in any of these fashions. Okay? In Hebrew Bible, kinship terms like brother or sister typically denote literal siblings, or at most members of the same ethnic group. Children of Israel for Israelites. There is no, read that again, there is no precedent for calling a woman from a later era the sister of a biblical figure like Aaron to indicate lineage or role. Now we go to the rabbinic text, the Talmud and the Midrash. Use Rabbinic texts and Midrash use typological comparisons, i.e. comparing later figures to Moses or David, but no such comparison exists for Mary and Miriam / Aaron. Mary is not a significant figure in Jewish tradition, and no text likens her to Miriam. Absence in Jewish sources, neither in the Talmud, the Midrash, nor later Jewish writings, i.e. the Toledat Yashu, referred to Mary as Aaron's sister. Okay, now we move on to the daughter of Imran. Biblical context in Jewish tradition, Imran, or Amram in Hebrew, is the father of Moses, Aaron, and Miriam. He is a Levite figure from the Exodus era with no connection to later figures like Mary. The Hebrew Bible and Rabbinic texts do not associate Imran with any descendants in the 1st century CE, nor do they link him to the family of Jesus. Genealogical use. Jewish traditions is meticulous about genealogies. Man, these people are anal retentive. Orthodox Muslim was anal retentive. There is no record of Mary being called the daughter of Imran or being linked to Imran's family. Instead, the Jewish and New Testament sources associate Mary with the tribe of Judah through her betrothed to Joseph of the Davidic line. Metaphorical or topological use. Jewish tradition occasionally used daughter metaphorically, i.e. daughter of Zion or Jerusalem in Isaiah 1:8, but there is no instance of calling a historical woman the daughter of a biblical patriarch like Aaron to denote spiritual or tribal affiliation. No midrash or other text applies this term to Mary or suggests she is a figurative descendant of Imran. We go to tribal or typological connections, Levite lineage. The Quran's reference imply Mary is from the tribe of Levite, possibly due to her association with Aaron and Imran. Jewish tradition, however, does not place Mary in the Levite tribe. Oh, sorry, does not compute. Apocryphal influence. It seems like, the Quran gets all its stuff from apocryphal influences and also from the Talmud. All right, we can go to cultural and linguistic consideration. Naming conventions in Jewish tradition, names like Miriam were common in the Second Temple period. Miriam is a frequent name in Josephus' Antiquities, but this reflects cultural naming trends, but not a direct link to the biblical Miriam. If Miriam in Hebrew, were called the sister of Aaron, it would be a novel usage without precedent in Jewish text. Arabic influence in the Quran. The Quranic use of sister may reflect Arabic linguistic norms, where sister or brother can denote tribal or communal. All right, no such reference exists in Jewish tradition. There's nothing. Jewish traditions maintain a clear chronological and theological distinction between Miriam and Mary. We're going to skip that. Conclusion. No Jewish tradition, biblical, rabbinic, or otherwise, calls Mary the mother of Jesus, the sister of Aaron. This is something that we should see, not just in the Quran. All right. Would they ever use this for anyone else? The question seems to ask, All right, we're just going to go through the same thing. Jewish tradition. Okay. We already went over the metaphorical. Conclusion, the phrase sister of Aaron is exclusively used for Miriam in Jewish traditions and not applied to anyone else, literally or figuratively. Same crap goes for daughter of Imran. Oh man, these people really love to repeat themselves. All right. Conclusion, Jewish tradition used sister of Aaron or daughter of Imran exclusively for Miriam, the sister of Moses. All right, so then I said, how about, use of sister of X who lived over 1,000 years before. Grok says, I understand you're asking whether Jewish tradition ever refers to a person as the sister of X, where X is a figure who lived over 1,000 years earlier, in literal, metaphorical, or typological sense, similar to the Quranic designation. Okay, ba 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 bam bam ba ba bam 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 bam. All right, Jewish tradition in use of sister of X for ancient figures. In Jewish tradition, kingship terms like sister, brother, son, or daughter are used in various ways, but the specific practice of calling someone the sister of X, where X is a historical figure from over 1,000 years earlier, is extremely rare and lacks a direct precedent. Below, I'll analyze the use of such terminology. All right, whoops. In biblical example, i.e. the Hebrew Bible, sister typically denotes a literal sibling relationship with a family. For example, Miriam is called the sister of Aaron and Moses. Dinah is the sister of Simeon and Levi. Right? No cross-era usage. There is no instances in the Hebrew Bible where a person is called the sister of X, with X being a figure from over 1,000 years. All right? Metaphorical or tribal usage. We already went over this. Kinship terms for tribes or groups in Hebrew, like the brother or sister, can denote tribal or ethnic kinship within the same generation or close time frame. Not 1,000 and 1,400 years later. Okay? No cross-millennium individual references. Jewish texts do not use sister of X for an individual to denote tribal or spiritual kinship with a figure from over 1,000 years. All right, we're not going to go over the typological. We already did that. There isn't any. Okay, no sister of X typology. There is no instance in Jewish tradition where a woman is called a sister of X, with X being a figure from over 1,000 years to signify a typological connection. For example, Huldah, a prophetess in the 7th century BC, is not called a sister of Miriam, despite both of them being prophetesses. Alrighty, we're going to skip that. We're going to skip that. No, skip that. We're going to skip that. All right. Conclusion. The Jewish tradition does not use the phrase sister of X, where X is a figure who lived 1,000 years. But I said, you know what? Let's use 100 years instead of 1,000. Okay. Jewish tradition in the use of sister of X for figures 100 years earlier. In Jewish tradition, kinship terms like sister, brother, or daughter are used literally for immediate family, tribally for group affiliation, or occasionally metaphorically for poetic or typological purpose. However, calling an individual the sister of X, where X is a specific historical figure from about 100 years or earlier, is not common practice and lacks clear example in Jewish texts. Okay, I'm not going to go through all of this. Okay. Okay. Nope. All right. Alrighty. The daughter of Zion, that's not a person. Okay. Relevance to Mary. Quranic text is bullcrap. Why Jewish tradition avoids such terminology? I'm not going to go through all of this. Let's just skip to the conclusion. Jewish tradition does not refer to anyone as the sister of X, where X is a specific figure who lived about 100 years. So they would not use for sister of Aaron, or sister of Moses, or sister or daughter of Imran. So we can conclude it's never been used, correct? And the answer is yes. All right. And then it goes on to say that I said, thank you. So then I said, what credible references do we have for Mary's father's name, and if she had any siblings? Now, this is where both Christians and Muslims have a problem. We do not have any sources, not biblically sources, not church father sources, where Mary's father's name is mentioned, or if she had any siblings and their names. There is a source, right? It's an apocryphal source that does mention her father's name as Joachim and her mother's name is Anna. Okay? But I'm going to be honest. It's an apocryphal. It's something from the 2nd century. Okay? That comes from the apocryphal Christian text, the Proto-Evangelium of James, which This state Mary's father's name as Joachim and Anna. Okay? So we do have something. Muslims have absolutely zero. Again, Jewish sources, Talmud, none of them really say anything. Okay? Again, ladies and gentlemen, the burden of proof is not on us. The burden of proof is on the Muslim, because the Quran is making the claim. Other historical sources, right? All righty. So we got to be honest. Okay, so conclusion, the most credible references for Mary's father's name is in the New Testament, which does not name him, and the Proto-Evangelium of James, which is an apocryphal. All right. So then I said, well, in that case, a Muslim can claim an argument from silence, which they would also fall into. That is correct. We actually have at least one source, right, that mentions the name, while the Muslims have zero sources. And we have more sources to deny the Mary sister or daughter crap. All right. So I'm not too worried about that. So we won't go about this. I may put this for download if you want. I'll have to figure out how to do that, where to house it. So we'll see. All right. Weakness of their silence argument. Lack of positive evidence. The Quran claims, right, are not corroborated by any pre-Quranic source, Jewish, Christian, or otherwise. They have basically nothing. If Imran were Mary's father, we would expect some trace of this tradition in the New Testament, church fathers, or even apocryphal texts like the Proto-Evangelium. We don't. No Jewish naming conventions. Jews did never say, oh, sister of somebody that lived 100 years or 1,000 years. We have conflation with Miriam. The burden of proof. The Quran's claim, appearing centuries later, bears the burden of proof to provide evidence. A Muslim arguing from silence falls into the same trap as they can't provide positive evidence. We at least have one evidence, whether you accept it or not. All right? Gra goes on to say, why is the Muslim argument from silence weaker? Context of sources, Jewish and early Christian sources, New Testament, church fathers are genealogically and historically focused, making their silence on Imran/Aaron significant. Right? If the Quran is true, we should see somebody, Jewish sources, Christian sources, church fathers, somebody referencing that Mary had a brother named Aaron, right? Or a father named Imran. We don't. All right? We can skip that. Like I said, it's a two-edged sword. Right? But I have more evidence on my side than they do. All right, so then I ask something that's very interesting. I believe the Quran infers Mary was raised in the temple. Was this even allowed in Jewish tradition? Now that's a problem. The Quran does indeed suggest that Mary was raised or spent time in a sacred space, often interpreted as the temple under the care of Zechariah. We find this in Quran 3:37 that states Mary's mother dedicated her to God's service, and Zechariah took charge of her, with Mary residing in a mahrab, often translated as a prayer chamber or sanctuary. This has been understood in Islamic tradition to mean she was raised in or closely associated with the Jerusalem temple, which is funny. There is no mention of Jerusalem in the Quran. Your question asks whether such an arrangement, Mary being raised in the temple, was allowed or practiced in Jewish traditions, particularly in the context of debate about Quranic claims regarding Mary's lineage. All right, to address this, I'll examine Quranic context, Islamic tradition, debate relevance. If Jewish tradition do not allow women, especially young girls, to be raised in a temple, this would challenge the Quranic's narrative, historical accuracy, supporting your argument that the Quran's depiction of Mary, including her lineage as daughter of Imran may reflect May understanding of non-Jewish influence. Jewish tradition on women in temple service. The temple role in Jewish law, Second Temple period. Male-centric roles. The Jerusalem temple's operations were governed by Jewish law primarily from the Torah, Leviticus and Numbers. Temple service was exclusively male-centered on priests, the Kohanim, from the tribe of Levi, Aaron's descendants, and Levites, non-priestly members of Levi. For example, but we're not going to go with that. Women were explicitly excluded from these roles, as priesthood and Levite duties were male-centric. Women's presence in the temple. Women could visit the temple's outer court, the court of women, according to Mishnah Middah 2.5, for worship, sacrifices, or festivals. However, they were barred from entering the inner courts, courts of priests. The sanctuary referred to male priests and Levites. No residential role. Jewish law and practice do not describe women, especially young girls, living or being raised in the temple. The temple was a ritual center, not a residence, except for the priests and Levites on duty. Okay, there is no provision in the Torah, in the Mishnah, or other texts for women being dedicated to live in the temple. Consecration and vows in Jewish tradition. Nazarene vows. Individuals could be dedicated to God via a Nazarite vow, okay, which involved abstaining from wine, cutting the hair, and touching corpses, blah, blah, blah. All right. None of this is important. Evidence from Jewish sources. Hebrew Bible. No text in the Torah, prophets, or writings describe women or girls being raised in a sacred space like the temple. The Mishnah and the Talmud. Okay. No mention of women living there or around there. Josephus. Okay. Never mentions women or girls living there. He does note that women's limited access to outer courts and strictly purity rules, the Dead Sea Scrolls. Now we look at cultural and practical considerations. Purity laws. Jewish law imposed strict purity regulations on women, especially during menstruation or childbirth. These would make it impractical for a young girl like Mary to live in the temple where ritual purity was paramount. Gender segregation. The Second Temple, Judaism enforced gender separation in sacred spaces. Women's access was restricted to avoid defilement. There's no precedent for female temple services. Comparing to the Quranic narrative, it contradicts Jewish law. It lacks support from the New Testament. Okay, Luke 1:26-38 mentions Mary and Nazareth, not in the temple of Jewish or Jewish sources. All right, Jewish tradition. No Jewish source, biblical, rabbinic, or historical, permits or records any girl being raised in the Jerusalem temple. The temple was male-centric. Why is this important for my debate? Well, it challenges the Quranic narrative. It's a conflation with other traditions, but we're going to skip this. Conclusion. Jewish tradition in the Second Temple period did not allow women, including young girls like Mary, to be raised in the Jerusalem temple. Temple services were reserved for male priests and Levites, and women's access was limited to the outer court for worship. No provisions for residency or dedication. In other words, Orthodox Muslim is once again full of bullshit.